My stepdad confessed he's been using my college fund to pay blackmail for 6 years. I found out about the missing money when I was 24, sitting in the financial aid office at community college for the third time that semester. The counselor kept saying there must be some mistake, that my stepdad, Scott, had assured them my college fund would cover the gap. But there was no fund. There had never been a transfer. I drove to my parents' house that night. Scott was in the garage, and when I confronted him, he didn't even try to lie. He just sat down on the workbench and put his head in his hands. He told me he'd had to do it, his voice barely above a whisper. I waited. My hands were shaking. This was the man who'd raised me since I was 11, who'd taught me to drive, who'd promised my mom before she died that he'd make sure I got through college. I finally asked if someone had been blackmailing him. He nodded, explaining it had been 6 years now. Started right after I turned 18. The timeline made my stomach drop. I asked what they had on him. It's not about me. He looked up, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Pure fear. It's about you. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I demanded to know what anyone could possibly have on me. Scott stood up and pulled out his phone, scrolled through, then handed it to me. It was an email thread. The first message was dated 6 years ago. I know what happened at the Lena's party. $20,000 or I go to the police. I stared at the name. Lena. I'd known Alina in high school. We'd all hung out. Me, Chad, Sydney, a bunch of us. There'd been a party at her house senior year. I told Scott I didn't understand, that nothing had happened at that party, that I barely remembered it. You were drunk, Scott said quietly. You called me at 2 a.m, hysterical. You said you'd done something terrible, that someone was hurt, that you needed help. I had no memory of this. None. I drove to Lena's house. You were in the backyard, covered in blood. There was a girl. Karen, I think her name was. She was unconscious. You kept saying it was an accident, that you'd pushed her during an argument, and she'd hit her head on the pool edge. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I stammered that this wasn't possible, that I would remember something like that. You were blacked out. You don't remember because you weren't forming memories. Scott's voice cracked. I got you out of there. I cleaned you up. I went back and I moved her. Made it look like she'd fallen on her own. She woke up in the hospital 2 days later with no memory of what happened. Traumatic amnesia, they said. I couldn't breathe. You're saying I nearly killed someone. It was an accident. You were kids, but someone saw me that night. Saw me staging the scene. They waited until you were 18, until they couldn't touch you as a juvenile anymore. Then they started asking for money. For 6 years, I'd been angry at Scott for making me go to community college, for saying the fund had been mismanaged. For 6 years, he'd been protecting me from my own blackout violence. Who is it? I whispered. Who's blackmailing you? Scott took his phone back and scrolled to the most recent email. The signature line at the bottom said, "Take care, Karen." The girl I'd hurt had been blackmailing my stepdad for 6 years. She remembered everything. She'd always remembered.